Blackwood House stood isolated in the dense forest. Its windows were broken and the walls were cracked. As dusk set in, the sky turned an eerie orange and purple, casting a sinister glow on the decaying structure. Inside the house, the foyer was dark and filled with dust and cobwebs. An old creaky staircase led up to the second floor, and a broken chandelier hung from the ceiling, its crystals missing or shattered. The living room was filled with tattered furniture and a cold fireplace. A broken window let in a sliver of moonlight, illuminating the peeling wallpaper and the thick layer of dust that covered everything. The kitchen was a mess of broken cabinets and rusty appliances. A large wooden table in the center was covered in dust and cobwebs, and an old broken stove stood in the corner, untouched for years. The dining room featured a long table with an old tattered tablecloth. The chairs were scattered and overturned, and a single dusty candle sat at the center of the table, unlit and forgotten. The hallway was long and dark, with old creaky floorboards and faded wallpaper. Closed doors lined the hallway, each marked with a different ominous symbol, hinting at the secrets hidden within. The bedroom was dusty and old, with a large canopy bed covered in cobwebs. The curtains were tattered, and moonlight streamed in through a cracked window, casting eerie shadows on the floor. The attic was filled with old, forgotten items covered in dust and cobwebs. A single small window let in a beam of moonlight, illuminating strange old toys scattered on the floor. The air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. The basement was dark and damp, with stone walls and a dirt floor. Old rusty chains hung from the ceiling, and the air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. The sense of dread was palpable, as if the walls themselves whispered secrets. As dawn broke, Blackwood House was bathed in a soft golden light. The forest around it remained dark, but the first rays of the sun illuminated the decaying structure. The night's terror faded, but the house's haunting presence remained, a testament to its cursed history. In a small town surrounded by dense woods, a group of friends receives an intriguing invitation to spend a weekend at a remote cabin nestled deep within the shadowed woods. Excited for an adventure, they eagerly accept the invitation, brushing off the warnings of locals who speak of strange happenings in the woods. Ignoring the growing sense of unease, they set off into the wilderness. As the friends arrive at the cabin, they are struck by its isolation, the nearest neighbor miles away, and the woods enveloping it like a fortress. Despite the tranquil surroundings, a feeling of foreboding settles over them as they step inside. The air is heavy with the scent of pine, and the only sound is the whispering of the wind through the trees. As night falls, the friends gather around a crackling fire, their laughter echoing through the stillness of the woods. But as the fire dies down, a chill descends, and strange noises begin to emanate from the darkness beyond. The friends exchange nervous glances, their senses on high alert as they listen to the eerie sounds of the night. While exploring the cabin, one of the friends stumbles upon a mysterious artifact, a weathered journal bound in leather. Intrigued, they begin to read, uncovering the journal's secrets, a tale of madness and obsession, of a previous occupant driven to madness by the shadows that lurk within the woods. As they read on, the sense of dread that hangs over the cabin intensifies. As night deepens, the friends begin to notice strange shadows moving among the trees. A flicker of movement in the corner of their eye, a rustling in the underbrush that seems to follow their every step. They try to brush it off as their imagination, but the shadows grow bolder, creeping closer and closer to the cabin. As the night wears on, the friends find themselves ensnared in a nightmare from which there seems to be no escape. The shadows grow thicker, wrapping themselves around the cabin like a cloak of darkness. They hear whispered voices in the night, their words unintelligible but undeniably menacing. Panic sets in as they realize they are not alone in the woods. With their backs against the wall, the friends make a final stand against the encroaching darkness. Armed with whatever weapons they can find, they venture out into the night, determined to confront the source of the shadows once and for all. With hearts pounding and adrenaline coursing through their veins, they steel themselves for the battle ahead. As the first light of dawn breaks over the horizon, the shadows begin to retreat, their grip on the forest loosening with each passing moment. The friends emerge from the darkness, battered and bruised but alive, though the horrors of the night will haunt them forever. They take solace in the knowledge that they've survived the darkness of the shadowed woods.
In the dead of night, a narrow road winds its way through the dense Blackwood forest. Four friends, Jack, Emily, Luke, and Mia, embark on a road trip, their headlights cutting through the thick fog that blankets the eerie landscape. Tall trees loom on either side, casting long, ominous shadows. As they journey deeper into the forest, they come upon the imposing gates of Blackwood Manor, a dilapidated mansion rumored to be haunted by vengeful spirits. The wrought iron gates groan open ominously as they approach, revealing the decaying facade of the mansion beyond. Inside Blackwood Manor, the foyer is shrouded in darkness, illuminated only by the faint glow of moonlight filtering through stained glass windows. Dust motes dance in the air as the friends cautiously make their way further into the mansion, the floorboards creaking beneath their feet. In their exploration, they stumble upon a library filled with ancient tomes and tattered manuscripts. The shelves groan under the weight of countless volumes, their spines cracked and faded. As they browse the dusty shelves, they hear whispered voices echoing through the room, sending shivers down their spines. Suddenly, ghostly figures materialize before them, translucent apparitions with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. The spirits drift through the library, their movements graceful yet unsettling. The friends watch in horror as the ghosts draw closer, their presence filling the room with a chilling aura. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the friends turn and flee from Blackwood Manor, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the darkened halls, their breath ragged and their footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind them, the ghostly apparitions follow, their unearthly wails growing fainter as the friends struggle to escape. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from Blackwood Manor, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They collapse on the ground outside, their bodies shaking with adrenaline and fear. As the first light of dawn breaks through the trees, they share a moment of relief, knowing they have survived the night and escaped the clutches of Blackwood Manor. In a secluded village surrounded by dense forests, there was a legend of the Whispering Woods, where the trees whispered secrets and shadows danced in the moonlight. A group of friends, led by Sarah, ventured into the Whispering Woods, drawn by the allure of the mysterious tales. They entered with trepidation, their hearts pounding with excitement and fear. As they delved deeper into the woods, the air grew thick with an unnatural chill, and the trees seemed to whisper secrets in a language unknown. Sarah led the group onward, her determination masking her growing unease. They stumbled upon a small clearing bathed in an ethereal glow, where ghostly figures danced in the moonlight, their laughter echoing eerily through the woods. Sarah hesitated, sensing danger lurking in the shadows. As they tried to leave, the forest seemed to shift around them, trapping them in a nightmarish maze of twisting paths and tangled roots. Panic set in as they realized they were lost in the Whispering Woods. In the heart of the forest, they encountered an ancient guardian, a towering figure cloaked in darkness, its eyes gleaming with malevolence. Sarah knew they had trespassed into a realm beyond their understanding. With courage born of desperation, Sarah and her friends made a final dash for freedom, racing through the twisting paths as the guardian's laughter echoed behind them. At last, they emerged from the Whispering Woods, shaken but alive.
In the dead of night, a group of friends, Sarah, Mark, and Emily, arrive at the imposing Ravenswood Manor, a sprawling mansion nestled deep within the forest. The moon casts an eerie glow over the overgrown grounds as they approach the decrepit mansion, drawn by tales of its haunted past. As they step through the creaking front door, the group is enveloped by darkness. The air is thick with dust, and the floorboards groan beneath their feet. Sarah lights a lantern, casting flickering shadows on the walls as they explore the abandoned foyer. As they venture further into the mansion, they are greeted by the sound of whispers echoing through the hallways. The walls seem to close in around them, and Sarah's lantern flickers ominously. They exchange nervous glances, but press on, determined to uncover the secrets of Ravenswood Manor. In the heart of the mansion, they discover a forgotten library, its shelves lined with dusty tomes and ancient manuscripts. Emily's heart races as she picks up a weathered book, its pages filled with cryptic symbols and arcane rituals. Suddenly, a cold breeze fills the room, and the books on the shelves begin to sway as if moved by unseen hands. As they explore further, they come across a portrait hanging on the wall, a grim-faced man with piercing eyes that seem to follow their every move. Mark shudders as he gazes into the man's cold, lifeless eyes, and Sarah quickly averts her gaze, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. As night falls, the mansion comes alive with ghostly apparitions and otherworldly sounds. Emily's heart races as she catches a glimpse of a figure moving in the shadows, its form shifting and indistinct. She cries out in fear, and the others rush to her side, their lanterns casting shaky light on the empty hallway. As the night wears on, the group's sanity begins to fray. They are plagued by visions and nightmares, their minds filled with images of death and despair. Sarah clutches her head in agony as she hears voices whispering in the darkness, urging her to embrace the madness that lurks within Ravenswood Manor. In a desperate bid to escape the madness that grips them, the group confronts the malevolent force that haunts Ravenswood Manor. With trembling hands, they perform a ritual to banish the darkness, their voices raised in a desperate plea for salvation. And as the first light of dawn breaks through the windows, the mansion shudders and groans, the darkness receding into the shadows from whence it came.
Emily and her brother Jack inherit an old mansion from their estranged uncle. The house, nestled deep in the woods, is grand but eerily quiet. As they explore, Emily finds an old, ornate key in a dusty drawer. She keeps it, wondering what it might unlock. That night, Emily wakes up to the sound of whispers and faint footsteps. She dismisses it as her imagination. When she looks out the window, she sees a shadowy figure standing under a tree in the garden. She calls Jack, but the figure is gone when he arrives. The next day, Emily and Jack search for what the key might unlock. They find a hidden door behind a bookshelf in the study. The key fits perfectly, revealing a small room filled with old books, an antique mirror, and a diary. Emily reads the diary and learns it belonged to a woman named Margaret who lived in the mansion years ago. Margaret wrote about seeing a ghostly figure and hearing whispers. Her last entry hints at a hidden treasure in the house. That night, Emily sees the ghostly figure in the mirror. The figure, a woman in old-fashioned clothing, looks sad and mouths the words, "Help me." Terrified, Emily tells Jack, who becomes determined to help her. Emily and Jack search the house for clues about Margaret's hidden treasure. They find a series of letters behind a loose brick in the fireplace. The letters reveal that Margaret's child was taken from her, and she hid a valuable locket somewhere in the house to protect it. As they continue their search, the ghost becomes more active, appearing more frequently and growing more desperate. Emily and Jack follow clues to the attic, where they find a locked chest. The key fits perfectly. Inside the chest, they find Margaret's locket, along with a letter explaining her tragic story. Margaret's spirit appears, looking peaceful. She thanks them silently before fading away, her spirit finally at rest. With Margaret's spirit at rest, the house feels lighter. The whispers and apparitions stop. Emily and Jack decide to stay and restore the mansion, feeling a connection to its history and to Margaret. Months later, Emily and Jack enjoy their peaceful home. They often think about Margaret and the extraordinary events that brought them closer together. The mansion is no longer haunted, but the memories of the past live on in a peaceful way.
It was a gloomy autumn afternoon when Emma, Liam, and Sarah arrived at Hollow Hill. The old mansion, inherited by Emma from a distant relative, stood isolated atop a hill surrounded by thick leafless trees. The wind howled, and the sky was an ominous gray. "This place is huge," Liam said, looking up at the towering structure. "And creepy." Emma nodded, clutching the old rusted key. "Let's get inside before it gets dark." They pushed open the creaky door and stepped into a grand, dusty foyer. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and shadows danced in the corners. The interior of the mansion was just as foreboding. Cobwebs draped the chandeliers, and the floorboards creaked under their weight. As they explored, they found rooms filled with antique furniture, old portraits, and thick layers of dust. "Look at this," Sarah said, pointing to a large, dusty portrait of a stern-looking man. "He must be one of your ancestors, Emma." Emma shivered. "Let's keep looking." In the library, they discovered a collection of ancient books. One particularly old book caught Emma's eye. It was bound in dark leather with a strange symbol on the cover. This looks interesting, Emma said, opening it carefully. That night they settled into their rooms. The mansion was eerily silent, with only the sound of the wind outside. As Emma lay in bed, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Suddenly she heard whispers. Sitting up, she saw a shadow move across the room. "Who's there?" she called out. But there was no response. Terrified, she ran to Liam's room. "Liam, I saw something!" Liam rubbed his eyes. "It was probably just your imagination. This place is spooky." But Emma knew what she saw. Something was not right in Hollow Hill. The next day, Emma and her friends decided to investigate the history of the mansion. In the library, they found an old journal belonging to the man in the portrait, Sir Edward Holloway. "Listen to this," Emma said, reading aloud. "He writes about strange rituals and dark magic." Sarah's eyes widened. That explains the creepy vibes. As they continued reading, they discovered that Sir Edward had conducted forbidden experiments, trying to unlock the secrets of immortality. Many people had gone missing in the area during his time. "This is bad," Liam said. "We need to be careful." While exploring the basement, they stumbled upon a hidden door behind a stack of old crates. Inside, they found a secret laboratory filled with strange equipment and jars containing bizarre specimens. "This must be where Sir Edward conducted his experiments," Liam said, examining the equipment. On a table, they found an old diary. As Emma read it, she discovered detailed accounts of the rituals and experiments Sir Edward had performed. "He was trying to summon something," Emma said, her voice trembling. "Something evil." Suddenly the air grew cold, and they heard a low, guttural growl. That night, the mansion came alive with supernatural activity. Doors slammed shut, lights flickered, and ghostly figures appeared in the hallways. Emma, Liam, and Sarah huddled together, terrified. "We need to get out of here," Sarah said, her voice shaking. But as they tried to leave, the front door wouldn't budge. It was as if the house itself was trapping them inside. "There's no way out," Liam said, panic in his voice. Emma remembered the book she found in the library. "There must be a way to stop this. We need to find the ritual to banish whatever he summoned." Back in the library, Emma frantically searched through the book for the banishment ritual. The ghostly figures grew more aggressive, knocking over furniture and whispering threats. "Here it is," Emma shouted, finding the ritual. As she began to recite the incantation, the room grew colder. A dark, shadowy figure appeared, towering over them. "You cannot banish me," the figure hissed. "This house is mine." Emma's voice wavered, but she continued the ritual. The shadow screamed in rage, its form flickering and destabilizing. "Keep going, Emma," Liam urged. The shadowy figure lunged at them, but a bright light emanated from the book, pushing it back. Emma continued the incantation, her voice gaining strength. "You will not win," the shadow roared, but it was growing weaker. With a final burst of energy, Emma completed the ritual. The shadow screamed one last time before disintegrating into a cloud of dark mist. The mansion shook violently, then fell silent. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the ghostly figures vanished. "We did it," Sarah said, tears of relief in her eyes. But Emma knew it wasn't over. The house had secrets yet to reveal. In the days that followed, the mansion remained quiet. Emma and her friends cleaned up and prepared to leave. But as they packed, they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. "We should go," Liam said. "This place is too dangerous." Emma nodded. "Let's leave this nightmare behind." They locked the mansion and drove away, vowing never to return. But as they looked back, they saw a figure in the window watching them leave. "Did you see that?" Sarah whispered. "Just keep driving," Emma said, gripping the wheel tightly. "We're never coming back." Back in their hometown, life slowly returned to normal. But Emma couldn't forget what happened. One night she found the old book on her bedside table, even though she had left it at the mansion. Her heart raced as she opened it. The pages had changed, now filled with new, ominous entries. "Welcome back," a voice whispered behind her. Emma spun around to see the shadowy figure from the mansion, its eyes glowing with malevolence. "You can never escape Hollow Hill," it said, reaching out for her. Emma screamed, the room plunging into darkness.
On a moonless night, a car winds its way along a desolate road flanked by dense forest. Inside the car are four friends, Sam, Emily, Alex, and Lily, on their way to a remote cabin for a weekend getaway. The headlights cut through the darkness, casting long shadows on the trees. Eventually, they arrive at the remote cabin, a rustic wooden structure nestled among the trees. The air is still, and the only sound is the distant hoot of an owl. As they unpack their belongings, a sense of isolation settles over them, amplifying the feeling of unease. As night falls, the friends decide to explore the surrounding forest, eager for adventure. But as they venture deeper into the woods, they feel an oppressive presence weighing down on them. Strange symbols are etched into the trees, their meanings lost to time. Suddenly, a chill wind sweeps through the forest, carrying with it faint whispers that seem to echo through the trees. The friends stop in their tracks, their hearts pounding in their chests. The whispers grow louder, filling the air with an eerie chorus that sends shivers down their spines. Suddenly, ghostly apparitions materialize among the trees, translucent figures with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. Their ethereal forms glow faintly in the darkness, and their voices fill the air with haunting wails. The friends watch in horror as the spirits drift closer, their movements slow and deliberate. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the friends turn and flee from the forest, their footsteps echoing through the darkness. Branches claw at their clothes, and roots trip them up as they race back to the safety of the cabin. Behind them, the ghostly spirits follow, their unearthly wails growing fainter with each step. Exhausted and trembling, the friends burst through the door of the cabin, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They lock the door behind them, their hearts still racing with fear. Inside the cabin, they huddle together, grateful for the safety of four walls and a roof. The dense forest of Hollow Creek was known for its eerie legends. Sarah, a young journalist, drove through the fog-covered road, her headlights barely piercing the thick mist. She was here to investigate the mysterious disappearances that plagued the town. As she reached the edge of the forest, a grand, decaying mansion emerged from the fog. Sarah stepped inside the mansion, her footsteps echoing in the vast, empty space. The air was cold and damp, and the smell of mold filled her nose. She walked through the grand foyer, noticing the decaying furniture and torn paintings. Her flashlight flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. Sarah's exploration led her to an old library. Shelves of dusty books lined the walls, and a grand fireplace dominated one side of the room. As she examined the books, she noticed one that seemed out of place. Pulling it out, a hidden door creaked open, revealing a dark, narrow passageway. Sarah entered the hidden passage, her flashlight illuminating the narrow, claustrophobic space. The walls were lined with old, faded photographs and strange symbols. As she moved deeper, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The passage led to a small, hidden room, filled with old toys and a child's bed. In the hidden room, Sarah felt a sudden chill. She turned to see a ghostly figure of a young girl standing by the bed, her eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. The girl reached out to Sarah, whispering, "Help me." Before Sarah could react, the girl vanished, leaving a small antique locket on the bed. Sarah picked up the locket and opened it, revealing a photograph of the young girl and an inscription, "To my beloved daughter, Emily." Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah searched the mansion's records and discovered that Emily had disappeared decades ago. Her family had hidden a dark secret. Emily was not their only victim. As Sarah pieced together the tragic history, the spirits of the mansion grew restless. Shadows moved on their own, and ghostly whispers filled the air. Emily's spirit appeared again, this time leading Sarah to the basement. There she found the remains of Emily and other victims. The spirits demanded justice. Determined to set the spirits free, Sarah confronted the mansion's last living descendant, a reclusive old man. She forced him to confess to his family's crimes. As he admitted the truth, the spirits appeared, surrounding him. With a final, sorrowful wail, they dragged him into the shadows, vanishing forever. With the truth revealed and justice served, the mansion began to crumble. Sarah escaped just in time, watching from a distance as the once grand estate collapsed into ruins. The spirits of Hollow Creek were finally at peace, and the oppressive fog lifted, revealing a bright, clear sky.
Willow House, an old decrepit mansion, stands alone in the middle of an overgrown yard. Its windows are shattered, and ivy climbs up the stone walls. As the sun sets, the house is bathed in a gloomy light, casting long shadows that hint at the mansion's dark past. Inside Willow House, the foyer is filled with dust and cobwebs. An old chandelier hangs from the ceiling, its crystals dulled by grime. A grand staircase leads up to darkness, and broken furniture lies scattered, remnants of a time long forgotten. The living room is a snapshot of a bygone era, with a dusty sofa and a cold, empty fireplace. Portraits of stern-looking ancestors line the walls, their eyes seeming to follow every movement. The air is thick with the scent of neglect and faded grandeur. In the dining room, a long table is draped with a dusty, tattered tablecloth. Cobwebs hang from a once elegant chandelier, and old rusty cutlery is scattered about. The broken windows let in the cold night air, amplifying the room's eerie stillness. The kitchen is in disarray with broken cabinets and old pots and pans scattered around. The walls are stained and the floor is covered in debris. An old rusted knife lies on the counter, a silent witness to the passage of time. The grand staircase is enveloped in darkness. The wooden steps creak with every movement, and the banister is thick with dust. Faint, eerie whispers echo through the air, sending shivers down the spine. In the bedroom, a canopy bed stands covered in dust and cobwebs. Moonlight filters through cracked windows, casting eerie shadows on the peeling wallpaper. An old wardrobe in the corner has its doors slightly ajar, adding to the room's unsettling atmosphere. The attic is cluttered with old, forgotten items covered in sheets and dust. A single dim light bulb hangs from the ceiling, casting long shadows that dance eerily. The air is thick and musty, filled with the scent of decay and lost memories. A hidden door in the attic reveals a secret room. Inside, the space is filled with old books and strange artifacts. A large, dust-covered mirror dominates one wall, reflecting an eerie, distorted image. The atmosphere is heavy with an unseen presence, making the air feel thick and oppressive. As dawn breaks, Willow House is bathed in the soft light of the morning sun. The shadows recede, revealing the full extent of the mansion's decay. Birds begin to chirp, their cheerful notes bringing a sense of normalcy back to the eerie setting. The horrors of the night fade, but the memories linger, a haunting reminder of the echoes that inhabit Willow House. It was a stormy night, the kind that forces even the bravest souls to stay indoors. Sarah sat alone in her dimly lit living room, the howling wind rattling the windows. She glanced at the clock, 11:45 p.m. Just 15 more minutes until midnight. She tried to focus on the book in her lap, but a sense of unease crept over her, making it impossible to concentrate. Suddenly, there was a loud knock at the door. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Who could it be at this hour, in such weather? She hesitated, then slowly walked to the door, her footsteps echoing in the silence of the house. Peeking through the peephole, she saw nothing but darkness. "Hello," she called out, her voice trembling slightly. No response. She turned away, thinking it must have been the wind playing tricks on her, when the knock came again, louder this time. Determined to face her fears, she unlocked the door and opened it a crack. A blast of cold air hit her, and there on the doorstep stood a small child, drenched and shivering. The child's face was hidden beneath a dark, hooded raincoat. "Can I come in?" the child asked, voice barely audible over the storm. Sarah hesitated. Something about the child felt off, but she couldn't leave them out in the cold. "Of course," she said, stepping aside to let the child in. "What's your name?" The child didn't answer. Instead, they silently moved past her and stood in the center of the living room, water pooling around their feet. Sarah closed the door and turned to face the child, noticing that despite the soaking clothes, the child's face was eerily dry. "Where are your parents?" Sarah asked. But the child remained silent. She moved closer, intending to help remove the wet raincoat, but the child stepped back, finally lifting their head. Sarah gasped. The face beneath the hood was not that of a child, but of something far older with hollow, sunken eyes and a twisted grin. "They couldn't make it," the entity whispered, voice dripping with malice. Fear paralyzed Sarah as the creature took a step forward. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. The lights flickered and the room grew colder. Suddenly, the clock struck midnight, and with each chime, the creature grew larger and more menacing. Sarah stumbled backward, her mind racing for an escape. As the final chime echoed through the house, the creature lunged at her, its bony fingers outstretched. In a final act of desperation, Sarah grabbed the nearest object, a heavy candlestick, and swung it with all her might. The creature let out an unearthly screech and vanished into thin air, leaving Sarah alone in the dark, trembling and gasping for breath. The storm outside began to subside, and a strange calm settled over the house. Sarah looked around, her heart still pounding, but the creature was gone. She locked the door, bolted the windows, and spent the rest of the night huddled on the couch, the candlestick clutched tightly in her hands. As dawn broke, Sarah finally allowed herself to relax. She had survived the night, but she knew deep down that the creature was still out there, waiting for another stormy night. The old house stood at the end of the lonely street, its windows shattered and its wooden walls weathered by time. Sarah had heard stories about the house since she was a child. It was said to be haunted, a place where shadows whispered secrets and the air was thick with dread. Determined to prove it was all just a myth, she decided to spend the night there. As Sarah pushed open the creaking door, the musty smell of decay hit her. The interior was dark, with only the faintest light filtering through the grimy windows. She stepped inside, the floorboards groaning under her weight. Every corner seemed to be alive with whispers, just out of reach. Sarah moved cautiously into the living room. The furniture was covered in dust and cobwebs draped from the ceiling. An old grandfather clock stood against the wall, its hands frozen at midnight. As she looked around, she heard a faint whispering, like someone speaking from the shadows. On the wall hung a portrait of a stern-looking man. His eyes seemed to follow Sarah as she moved. She felt a chill run down her spine. The whispers grew louder, and for a moment, she thought she saw the man's eyes blink. She stepped back in fear, her heart racing. Sarah found herself drawn to a door partially hidden behind a tattered curtain. She hesitated before pulling it open, revealing a set of stairs leading down into the darkness. The whispers were clearer now, urging her to descend. With trembling hands, she held her flashlight and began her descent. The basement was cold and damp, the walls lined with old shelves holding dusty jars and forgotten relics. The whispers were louder here, almost tangible. Sarah felt a presence behind her and spun around but saw nothing. Suddenly, an old radio crackled to life, playing a haunting lullaby. Sarah's flashlight flickered and died. In the darkness, she felt something brush against her arm. She backed away, stumbling over an old trunk. The whispers were deafening now. She managed to open the trunk, revealing an old diary. The pages told the story of a man who had lost his family and descended into madness, cursing the house and anyone who entered. Realizing the danger, Sarah grabbed the diary and rushed up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, the whispers turning into screams. Doors slammed shut around her, and the air grew colder. She reached the front door and burst out into the night, the whispers fading behind her. Outside, Sarah collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. She looked back at the house, now silent and still. She knew she could never explain what happened, but she had the diary as proof. As she walked away, she heard one last whisper in the wind, promising that the shadows would always be watching. In the heart of the small town of Ravenswood, a young historian named Emily discovered an ancient, dusty manuscript in the basement of the local library. The manuscript, bound in dark leather, was covered in strange symbols and appeared to be centuries old. Emily's curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to take it home for further study. As she left the library, the old librarian, Mr. Finch, watched her with a worried expression. "Be careful with that book," he warned. "It's said to be cursed." Emily shrugged off his concerns. "It's just an old book. What harm could it do?" At home, Emily began to translate the manuscript. It told the story of a powerful sorcerer who had cursed the book to trap the souls of those who read it. As she read, strange things started happening. The room grew colder, and shadows seemed to move on their own. Emily's cat, Luna, hissed and arched her back, staring at an invisible presence. Ignoring the signs, Emily continued to read, her fascination growing. I have to know more, she muttered to herself, her eyes glued to the ancient text. Late that night, Emily was awakened by a cold breeze and the feeling of being watched. She looked around her dark bedroom and saw a shadowy figure standing at the foot of her bed. It had hollow eyes and a twisted smile. Who are you? Emily whispered, her voice trembling. The figure didn't respond but began to move closer, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. Emily scrambled out of bed and turned on the light, but the figure vanished. Panting, she realized the curse was real. She needed help. The next day, Emily visited her friend Alex, who was an expert in the occult. She told him everything about the manuscript and the shadowy figure. This is serious, Alex said, flipping through the manuscript. You need to destroy this book before it's too late. Emily hesitated. But it's an incredible find. There must be another way. Alex shook his head. The longer you keep it, the stronger the curse will become. You don't understand the danger you're in. Emily reluctantly agreed. They decided to perform a ritual that night to break the curse. As night fell, Emily and Alex gathered the necessary items for the ritual: candles, salt, and an ancient incantation. They returned to Emily's house and set up in her study, drawing a protective circle on the floor. Are you sure this will work? Emily asked, placing the candles around the circle. It has to, Alex replied, lighting the candles. We don't have any other choice. Emily's hands trembled as she held the manuscript. Let's do this. As they began the ritual, the temperature in the room plummeted. The shadowy figure reappeared, more menacing than before. It howled and thrashed against the barrier of the protective circle. Keep chanting, Alex yelled over the noise. Emily's voice wavered as she recited the incantation, but she kept going. The figure's form started to waver, and it let out a piercing scream. With one final burst of energy, it shattered into 1,000 pieces of darkness, vanishing completely. Panting, Emily and Alex looked at each other. Is it over? Emily asked. I think so, Alex replied, his voice shaking. The room was eerily quiet after the spirit vanished. Emily knew what she had to do next. She took the manuscript and, with a heavy heart, threw it into the fireplace. The flames roared to life, consuming the ancient book. As the manuscript burned, Emily felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The curse was finally broken. Thank you, Alex, she said, watching the flames. We did it together, Alex replied. Let's hope we never encounter anything like this again. In the days that followed, Emily's life returned to normal. The eerie occurrences stopped, and she was able to focus on her work again. She vowed to be more cautious with the ancient texts she studied. One evening, she and Alex met at a cafe to catch up. How are you holding up? Alex asked. Better, Emily said with a smile. I think I've had enough excitement for a lifetime. They laughed, but a part of Emily still wondered about the other secrets the world held. For now, though, she was content to leave them undiscovered. As Emily walked home from the cafe, she felt a chill in the air. She glanced around, suddenly uneasy. When she arrived at her apartment, she found a package waiting at her door. Curious, she opened it and gasped. Inside was another ancient manuscript, even older than the one she had destroyed. Attached was a note, "For your collection." Emily's heart raced. She looked around, but there was no one in sight. She knew this was far from over. Emily sat at her desk, staring at the new manuscript. She knew she should destroy it, but her curiosity was overwhelming. She reached out and opened the book, unable to resist. As she began to read, the room grew colder once again. Shadows crept along the walls, and a familiar sense of dread filled the air. The curse had returned, and this time, it was more powerful than ever. Emily was trapped in an endless cycle, forever bound to the cursed manuscripts. The haunting of Ravenswood was far from over.
On the outskirts of town lies a dense forest, shrouded in mystery and fear. 4 friends, Alex, Sarah, Mark, and Jessica, venture into the woods, despite warnings of its haunted past. As they step into the darkness, eerie whispers seem to echo through the trees. Deep within the woods, they stumble upon an abandoned cabin. its windows boarded up and doors creaking in the wind. Against their better judgment, they enter, drawn by an inexplicable force. Inside, the air is heavy with the weight of forgotten secrets. Within the cabin, they find decaying furniture and cobwebs clinging to every corner. Strange symbols are etched into the walls, and the floorboards creak underfoot. Suddenly, they hear a faint whisper, chilling them to the bone. As they explore further, a sense of unease washes over them. Shadows dance in the corners of their vision, and the temperature drops. Then, they catch a glimpse of a spectral figure standing in the doorway, its eyes glowing with otherworldly light. Panic sets in as the ghostly figure approaches, its presence growing more ominous by the second. With hearts pounding, the friends flee the cabin, running blindly through the dark forest. Behind them, they hear the echoing laughter of the spirits that inhabit the woods. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from the woods, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They vow never to return to the forbidden woods, haunted by the echoes of their harrowing encounter. On a dark, stormy night, 5 friends, Alice, Ben, Clara, David, and Eva, walk down a desolate street. They come across an old, dilapidated house at the end of the road. The house is known among locals as the last house on the street and is rumored to be haunted. Despite their fear, curiosity gets the better of them, and they decide to explore the house. The door creaks loudly as they push it open, revealing a dusty, abandoned interior. They enter the living room, which is filled with old furniture and a large, cracked mirror on the wall. Suddenly, the door slams shut behind them, and they hear faint whispering. The whispering leads them to a hidden door behind the stairs, which opens to a dark basement. Hesitant but determined, they descend the creaky steps, the air growing colder with each step. In the basement, they find an old chest. When they open it, they discover ancient cursed artifacts and a diary. The diary tells the story of a family that disappeared mysteriously, and it warns of a malevolent spirit trapped in the house. As they read the diary, the temperature drops, and a chilling presence fills the room. Shadows begin to move on their own, and the friends see a ghostly figure emerging from the darkness. Realizing they need to escape, they run back up the stairs. The house seems to come alive, with doors slamming and windows shattering. They finally break free and run out into the stormy night, vowing never to return. Back in the safety of their homes, they sit together, shaken but relieved. They know they will never forget the night they encountered the haunted house at the end of the street. On a dark, stormy night, 4 friends, Tom, Sarah, Mike, and Emma, stood at the gates of Blackwood Manor. The old house was rumored to be haunted, but they were determined to spend the night there as a dare. They pushed open the heavy front door, which groaned loudly. Inside, the house was dark and filled with dust. Old furniture covered in white sheets and cobwebs in every corner made the place look abandoned and eerie. In the living room, they saw a grand piano in the corner and a large broken chandelier hanging from the ceiling. Suddenly, the piano played a single, eerie note, causing everyone to jump in fright. They decided to explore the upstairs. The wooden stairs creaked under their weight. At the top, they found a long hallway with several closed doors. A cold breeze made them shiver, and they heard faint whispering. They opened one door and found a room filled with old, dusty toys. The air was freezing, and a rocking chair in the corner started moving by itself. They heard a child's laughter echoing around them. Panicking, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even colder and darker. They found strange symbols on the walls and old, broken furniture. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. She stared at them with hollow eyes and whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Blackwood Manor. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying, and agreed to never speak of it again. Emma arrived at Hollow Hill, an old mansion inherited from a distant relative she never knew. Surrounded by a dense forest, the mansion looked abandoned and sinister. The sky was overcast, and a sense of unease washed over her as she approached the entrance. Emma pushed open the heavy wooden door, which groaned loudly. Inside, the mansion was dark and musty. Dust covered every surface, and cobwebs hung in the corners. an eerie silence filled the air, broken only by the distant sound of creaking floorboards. Emma stepped into the living room, where old furniture lay shrouded in white sheets. An old fireplace dominated one wall, with a large mirror above it. She saw a faint movement in the mirror, but when she turned around, the room was empty. The only sound was the faint ticking of an old clock. In the hallway, Emma found portraits of her ancestors. The eyes of the painted figures seemed to follow her. She felt a chill as she passed by a particularly stern-looking man. Suddenly, she heard a whisper, but when she turned around, no one was there. Emma discovered the mansion's library, filled with ancient books and old furniture. She found an old leather-bound journal on a desk. As she opened it, she read about dark rituals and mysterious deaths that plagued her family. The air grew colder, and she felt an unseen presence watching her. Emma noticed a hidden door behind a bookshelf. She hesitated, but pushed it open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down. The air was damp and cold. Holding her flashlight, she descended the stairs, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the silence. The basement was cold and damp, with strange symbols painted on the walls. An altar stood in the center, surrounded by melted candles and old, tattered books. As Emma approached the altar, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The symbols seemed to glow faintly, and she heard distant, echoing whispers. Emma's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold hand brush against her arm. Panic set in as she fumbled to turn the flashlight back on. When it flickered back on, she saw a ghostly figure standing by the altar, staring at her with hollow eyes. Desperate to escape, Emma turned and ran up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, with doors slamming and shadows moving around her. She reached the front door, threw it open, and ran into the stormy night, her heart pounding. She didn't stop until she reached her car. Breathing heavily, Emma glanced back at the mansion as she reached her car. In an upstairs window, she saw the ghostly figure watching her. The whispers faded, but the memory of that night would haunt her forever. She drove away, vowing never to return.
Emily, a young historian, inherits the infamous Blackwood Mansion from her estranged great-uncle. Accompanied by her friends Jack and Lucy, she arrives on a stormy evening, the rain pouring down as they make their way through the overgrown driveway. The mansion looms before them, dark and foreboding. "Are you sure about this, Emily?" Jack asks, his voice barely audible over the howling wind. "We need to know what he left behind," Emily replies, gripping the ancient key tightly. Inside, the mansion is a maze of dusty rooms and forgotten relics. The grand staircase is adorned with cobwebs, and the air smells of mildew and decay. They split up to explore, flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. "This place is a historian's dream," Emily says, opening an old book. Lucy shivers. "More like a nightmare." Jack finds a locked door in the basement. "Hey, I think I found something." After breaking the lock, they enter a hidden room filled with strange artifacts and occult symbols. In the center, there's an altar with a dusty old book and a glowing amulet. "This must be where he performed his rituals," Jack says, examining the symbols. Emily picks up the amulet. "Look at this. It's beautiful." Lucy steps back uneasy. "I don't like this place. We should leave." That night, they decide to stay in the mansion. As they settle in, strange things begin to happen. Doors creak and whispering voices echo through the halls. Emily is awakened by the sound of footsteps in her room. "Who's there?" she whispers, clutching the amulet. A shadowy figure moves in the corner, vanishing when she turns on the light. The next day, Emily and her friends delve into the old book they found. It reveals a dark history of the Blackwood family, including a curse that promises eternal torment to anyone who disturbs the amulet. "This explains the strange occurrences," Emily says, her voice shaking. "We need to put the amulet back." "But where does it go?" Jack asks. The book mentions a secret crypt beneath the mansion. They find the entrance to the crypt hidden beneath a trapdoor in the basement. The air is cold and damp as they descend the stone steps. The crypt is filled with ancient tombs and eerie statues. "This place gives me the creeps," Lucy says, her voice echoing. Emily finds a pedestal with an indentation matching the amulet. "This must be it." As she places the amulet on the pedestal, the ground shakes, and a ghostly figure appears, screaming in rage. That night, the mansion becomes a nightmare. Ghostly apparitions roam the halls and objects move on their own. The friends are terrorized by relentless hauntings. They gather in the living room, trying to come up with a plan. "We need to banish the spirits," Emily says, holding the book of spells. Jack nods. "Let's do it together." They begin the ritual, their voices shaky but determined. As they recite the banishment spell, the apparitions grow more aggressive. The temperature drops and a fierce wind blows through the mansion. The dark figure from before reappears, trying to stop them. "Keep going!" Emily shouts over the chaos. With a final shout, they complete the ritual. The figure screams and dissolves into mist. The wind dies down, and the mansion falls silent. "We did it," Lucy whispers, tears of relief in her eyes. The next morning, the mansion feels different. The oppressive atmosphere is gone, and sunlight streams through the windows. The friends prepare to leave, feeling a sense of accomplishment. "We should document everything," Emily says, looking back at the mansion one last time. Jack nods. "Let's make sure no one else has to go through this." They lock the doors and drive away, leaving Blackwood Mansion and its dark history behind. Back home, life seems to return to normal. But one night, Emily finds the old amulet on her bedside table, even though she left it in the crypt. Her heart races as she picks it up, and the room grows cold. A whispering voice fills the room. "You cannot escape the curse." Emily turns to see the dark figure standing behind her, its eyes glowing with malevolence. She screams as the room plunges into darkness.
In the heart of a dense forest stands an old mansion, its once grand facade now crumbling and overgrown with ivy. Four friends, Tom, Sarah, Emily, and Jake, arrive at the mansion one foggy evening, drawn by rumors of its haunting. The air is heavy with anticipation as they approach the imposing structure. With trepidation, the friends push open the creaking front door and step into the mansion's entryway. Cobwebs cling to the ceiling, and dust dances in the beams of their flashlights. The air is thick with a sense of foreboding as they take their first steps into the abandoned mansion. Inside the mansion, they encounter a labyrinth of hallways lined with closed doors. Each room they enter is filled with decaying remnants of the past, broken furniture, faded paintings, and tattered curtains. Strange symbols are etched into the walls, and the air is heavy with the scent of decay. As they delve deeper into the mansion, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to echo through the halls. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an unsettling chorus. The friends exchange nervous glances, their hearts pounding as they try to locate the source of the haunting sounds. Suddenly, ghostly figures materialize before them, translucent apparitions with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. The ethereal beings glide through the air, their movements graceful yet unsettling. The friends watch in horror as the spirits draw closer, their presence filling the mansion with a chilling aura. With adrenaline driving them, the friends turn and flee from the mansion, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the dark corridors, their breath ragged and their footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind them, the ghostly spirits follow, their unearthly wails growing fainter as the friends struggle to escape. Exhausted and trembling, the friends burst through the door of the mansion, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They collapse on the ground outside, their bodies shaking with adrenaline and fear. As the mist begins to dissipate, they share a silent vow never to return to the mansion's shadowed halls. Emma, a young woman in her late 20s, inherits an old mansion called Oakwood Manor from her estranged aunt. She decides to visit the house, hoping to sell it quickly. As she arrives, she feels an unsettling chill in the air. The house, surrounded by towering oak trees, looks like it hasn't been touched in decades. On her first night in the house, Emma explores the dusty, dimly lit rooms. She finds a family portrait with a stern-looking woman who resembles her aunt. As she prepares for bed, she hears strange noises, whispers and footsteps echoing through the empty hallways. The next day, Emma discovers a locked room at the end of the hallway. Curious, she searches the house and finds an old, rusty key in a drawer. The key fits, and as she opens the door, she finds an old nursery filled with cobweb-covered toys and an old rocking chair that starts moving on its own. That night, Emma is awakened by a cold breeze and sees a ghostly figure of a child standing by her bed. The child whispers, "Help me." Terrified, Emma tries to communicate, but the figure vanishes. She realizes the house holds dark secrets that need to be uncovered. Determined to uncover the truth, Emma searches the house and finds a hidden diary in the nursery. The diary belonged to her aunt and reveals a tragic story about the death of a child named Lily, who was her aunt's daughter. The diary hints at dark rituals conducted to communicate with Lily's spirit. Emma decides to perform a seance to contact Lily's spirit. She sets up candles and chants the words from the diary. The room grows cold and Lily's ghost appears, revealing that she was trapped by her mother's rituals. Lily begs Emma to free her. Emma follows the diary's instructions to break the ritual. As she performs the final steps, the house shakes violently, and a dark shadow emerges, trying to stop her. Emma confronts the shadow, realizing it's her aunt's tormented spirit, refusing to let Lily go. With determination, Emma completes the ritual, and the shadow dissipates with a final, anguished scream. Lily's spirit is freed, and she smiles gratefully at Emma before disappearing into a bright light. The house grows calm and quiet. With the haunting over, Emma decides to stay at Oakwood Manor and turn it into a writer's retreat. She feels a deep connection to the house and its history. As she sits on the porch, the sun sets, casting a warm glow over the once haunted mansion.
An old abandoned cabin stands alone in the heart of a dense forest. The wooden walls are rotting, and the windows are broken, giving the place a forlorn look. Tall, menacing trees surround the cabin, their long shadows stretching as the sun begins to set. Inside the cabin, the living room is a relic of the past, covered in dust and cobwebs. An old moth-eaten sofa sits in the center of the room, facing a fireplace with burnt logs. A single lantern flickers, casting eerie shadows on the walls, hinting at the secrets the cabin holds. The kitchen is in complete disrepair, with broken cabinets and rusted appliances. Moonlight filters through a cracked window, casting a pale glow on an old blood-stained knife lying on the counter. The air is thick with the scent of decay and forgotten memories. A narrow path winds through the dark forest, with twisted tree branches reaching out like skeletal hands. The ground is littered with fallen leaves, and an eerie mist rises from the forest floor, adding to the sense of unease that hangs in the air. In a clearing deep within the forest, the full moon illuminates an ancient stone altar. The altar is covered in moss and vines, and strange symbols are carved into the stone, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The air is thick with an otherworldly presence, making the skin crawl. A dark, fast-flowing river cuts through the forest, its black waters reflecting the moonlight. A rickety wooden bridge spans the river, creaking ominously with each gust of wind. The sound of the rushing water adds to the sense of isolation and dread. The basement of the cabin is dark and damp, with stone walls covered in moss. Rusted chains hang from the ceiling, swaying slightly in the draft. The floor is littered with broken bottles and old bones, remnants of a sinister past. A hidden room in the basement, revealed by a secret door, is filled with ancient books and strange artifacts. A large, dusty mirror dominates the room, reflecting an eerie glow. The air is thick with the scent of old parchment and something darker, more malevolent. As dawn breaks, the edge of the forest is bathed in a soft, golden light. The shadows recede, revealing the cabin in the distance. Birds begin to sing, their cheerful notes bringing a sense of normalcy back to the eerie setting, but the haunting memories of the night linger. In the morning light, the abandoned cabin appears less menacing, but still forlorn. The broken windows and overgrown yard are clearly visible, and a sense of unease still lingers in the air. The events of the night have left their mark, a reminder that some secrets are best left undisturbed.
Sarah and her husband, David, arrive at Silverwood Manor, an old estate they inherited from Sarah's distant relative. The house is imposing, with tall windows and ivy-covered walls. As they unpack, Sarah finds an old, dusty music box in the attic. Intrigued, she decides to keep it. That night, Sarah is awakened by the soft melody of the music box playing on its own. She also hears faint whispers and footsteps. Frightened, she wakes David, but the sounds stop as soon as he is awake. They both dismiss it as the house settling. The next day, Sarah and David find an old journal hidden in a secret compartment of the music box. It belonged to a girl named Eliza who lived in the house a century ago. The journal entries describe Eliza's fear of a dark presence in the house. That night, the whispers and footsteps return, louder and more menacing. Sarah sees a shadowy figure at the foot of her bed. The figure reaches out to her, and she screams, waking David. The figure vanishes, but the air remains cold and heavy. Desperate for answers, Sarah and David contact a local historian. The historian tells them about Eliza's tragic story. She was believed to have been haunted by a malevolent spirit and disappeared mysteriously. Her body was never found. Following the historian's advice, Sarah and David search the basement and find a hidden door behind some old crates. Inside, they discover a small room with old furniture and a large cracked mirror. The room is freezing, and they feel a strong, oppressive presence. Sarah looks into the mirror and sees Eliza's ghost. Eliza silently pleads for help, showing Sarah visions of her past and how the malevolent spirit trapped her in the hidden room. Eliza points to a spot on the floor where her remains are buried. Sarah and David dig at the spot Eliza indicated and find her remains. They perform a simple ritual to lay her spirit to rest. As they finish, Eliza's ghost appears one last time, smiling gratefully before fading away. The air becomes warm and peaceful. With Eliza's spirit at rest, Silverwood Manor feels lighter and more welcoming. The whispers and footsteps stop. Sarah and David decide to stay and restore the manor, feeling a deep connection to its history and to Eliza.
On a chilly autumn evening, four friends, Mark, Lisa, Danny, and Sophie, arrived at the small, deserted village of Hollow Creek. They had heard rumors of a haunting and wanted to investigate. The village was eerily quiet, with mist curling around the old, decaying buildings. The friends walked through the empty streets, their footsteps echoing. They saw abandoned houses, broken street lamps, and overgrown gardens. As they explored, they noticed strange symbols carved into the doors and walls of the houses. They found an old inn at the center of the village. The door creaked as they pushed it open. Inside, the inn was dark and cold. Dust covered the furniture and a musty smell filled the air. They decided to stay there for the night, hoping to uncover the village's secrets. As night fell, the friends gathered in the main room of the inn. They set up their sleeping bags and lit a small fire in the fireplace. The flickering light cast eerie shadows on the walls. They heard faint whispers and creaks, but dismissed them as the old building settling. At midnight, Sophie woke up to a strange noise. She saw a figure standing at the foot of her sleeping bag. She screamed, waking the others. The figure vanished, but the friends could still feel its presence. They huddled together, too scared to sleep. The next morning, they decided to search the inn for clues. In an old chest, they found a diary. It belonged to a girl named Emily who lived in the village decades ago. Her last entry spoke of a dark presence that haunted Hollow Creek, driving the villagers away. As they read the diary, they learned that Emily had tried to summon spirits to help the village, but something went wrong. Instead of help, she had unleashed a malevolent entity. The friends realized that the haunting was real, and they were in grave danger. Suddenly, the room grew cold. The friends could see their breath in the air. The entity appeared before them, a dark, shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. It moved towards them, whispering in a language they couldn't understand. Panic set in as they tried to find a way out. Mark found an old key in the diary. Desperate, he used it on a hidden door they hadn't noticed before. The door led to a tunnel beneath the inn. The friends rushed through the tunnel, the entity's whispers echoing behind them. They emerged outside, gasping for breath. The friends didn't stop running until they were far from Hollow Creek. Exhausted and terrified, they vowed never to speak of what happened. As they left, they could still hear the faint whispers of the entity, warning them never to return. In a tranquil forest clearing, the dying light of day cast long shadows over the lush greenery. At the center of the clearing looms a rustic cabin, its weathered facade hinting at secrets hidden within. Inside the cabin, the living room is shrouded in darkness, illuminated only by the feeble glow of a single lamp. Faded wallpaper peels from the walls, and worn-out furniture sits silent and still. Dust dances in the air, stirred by an unseen presence that lingers in the shadows. Outside, the forest clearing is bathed in the ethereal glow of moonlight, casting a haunting pall over the landscape. Ominous clouds gather overhead, and the trees sway in the wind, their branches casting eerie shadows that seem to dance in the darkness. In the kitchen, neglect hangs heavy in the air, with peeling paint and cobwebs clinging to every surface. Moonlight filters through grimy windows, casting twisted shadows that seem to writhe and twist upon the dusty countertops and rusted appliances. Along a winding forest path, darkness reigns supreme, with gnarled trees looming overhead like silent sentinels. The path disappears into the blackness, its destination unknown and foreboding, daring any who venture forth to tread carefully. In the bedroom, the air is musty and thick with the scent of decay. A creaky bed sits silent and still, its threadbare curtains fluttering in the breeze. Moonlight filters through cracks in the walls, casting eerie patterns that dance upon the worn floorboards like specters in the night. As night falls, a raging storm descends upon the forest clearing, with lightning illuminating the sky in blinding flashes and thunder rumbling like the roar of a distant beast. The wind howls through the trees, whipping up leaves and debris in a frenzied dance of chaos and despair. Deep within the bowels of the cabin lies the basement, a dark and foreboding chamber filled with crumbling walls and rusty pipes. Moonlight filters weakly through a small window, casting a feeble glow over the mold-covered floor, illuminating the dank and musty air with its eerie light. As dawn breaks, the forest clearing is bathed in the soft light of a new day, with birds chirping and dew glistening on the leaves like scattered diamonds. The storm has passed, leaving behind a sense of calm and renewal that belies the horrors that lurk within the haunted cabin. In the cabin's living room, morning sunlight streams through the windows, banishing the shadows and illuminating the space with its warm embrace. Dust motes dance lazily in the air, and the oppressive atmosphere of the night has lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and serenity that signals the dawn of a new day.
Emily, Jake, and Sarah arrived at Blackwood Manor, an ancient, crumbling estate shrouded in mist. The manor had been abandoned for decades, and stories of its haunting were legendary. They were there to document the paranormal activity for their online show. "This place is seriously creepy," Sarah said, shivering as she stepped out of the car. "That's the point," Jake replied, setting up his camera. "The spookier, the better." Emily led the way up the overgrown path to the front door, her excitement mixed with unease. "Let's get inside and start setting up." Inside the manor, the air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. The grand hall was filled with old furniture, draped in white sheets. As they explored, they found evidence of the past: old portraits, tattered books, and broken artifacts. "Look at this," Sarah said, picking up an old locket. "It must have belonged to someone important." Jake filmed everything, capturing the unsettling atmosphere. "This is going to be great footage." Emily found an old diary on a dusty table. "This might tell us what happened here." Emily read aloud from the diary, which detailed the tragic story of the Blackwood family. They had practiced dark rituals, summoning spirits that ultimately led to their downfall. The diary ended abruptly, hinting at a terrible event. "This is so creepy," Sarah said, looking around nervously. "We need to document everything," Jake insisted. "This is gold." As Emily closed the diary, a sudden chill filled the room. The lights flickered, and they heard a distant whisper. "Did you hear that?" Emily asked, her voice shaking. A shadow moved across the hall, catching their attention. They followed it to a room at the end of the corridor. Inside, the temperature dropped dramatically, and they saw a figure standing by the window. "Who's there?" Jake called out, but there was no response. The figure turned slowly, revealing a face twisted with pain and anger. It lunged at them, and they ran, slamming the door behind them. "We need to get out of here," Sarah screamed. "Not yet," Emily said, her fear giving way to determination. "We have to finish what we started." Emily found instructions for a banishment ritual in the diary. They gathered candles, chalk, and other items needed for the ritual. The air was thick with tension as they worked quickly, knowing the spirit could return at any moment. "Are you sure this will work?" Jake asked, lighting the candles. "It has to," Emily replied, drawing a circle on the floor. "We don't have any other choice." Sarah stood guard, her eyes darting around the room. Hurry up. I don't want to be here any longer than we have to. As they began the ritual, the spirit returned, more furious than before. It howled and thrashed against the invisible barrier created by the circle. Emily chanted the incantation from the diary, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Keep it away from us," Sarah yelled, clutching a candle. "We're almost there," Emily shouted back, her focus unwavering. The spirit's form began to waver and dissolve as the ritual reached its climax. With one final desperate scream, it vanished into thin air. The friends collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a peaceful silence. "We did it," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's get out of here," Sarah urged, her eyes still wide with fear. They gathered their things and left the manor, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. As they walked away from Blackwood Manor, they felt a sense of triumph and relief. "Let's never do this again," Jake said, managing a weak smile. As they walked away from the manor, the sun rose higher, casting a warm glow over the forest. The manor behind them was now just a distant memory, a place they would never forget but never return to. "Let's make a pact," Emily said, stopping to look at her friends. "We never speak of this again." "Agreed," Jake and Sarah said in unison. They walked on, the past behind them and the future ahead, grateful to have survived the haunting of Blackwood Manor.
In the quiet countryside, shrouded in mist, stands the imposing Blackwood Manor, a mansion long abandoned and rumored to be haunted. A group of thrill-seekers, Alex, Lily, and James, arrive at the manor one moonlit night, drawn by its dark history. As they approach the manor, they are greeted by a heavy iron gate, its rusty bars twisted and warped with age. The gate creaks open ominously, as if welcoming them into its dark embrace. The group hesitates, but their curiosity pushes them forward. Inside the manor, the air is thick with dust and the scent of decay. The group explores room after room, their footsteps echoing off the empty walls. Shadows dance in the flickering candlelight, and strange whispers seem to follow them wherever they go. As they delve deeper into the manor, they uncover signs of its dark past. Forgotten diaries filled with tales of madness and despair, hidden passages leading to secret chambers, and portraits of long-dead residents whose eyes seem to follow their every move. As night falls, the manor comes alive with ghostly apparitions and sinister whispers. The group is plagued by visions of the past, echoes of tragedy and despair that seem to seep from the very walls themselves, threatening to consume them. In a desperate bid to escape the manor's grasp, the group races through its labyrinthine halls, their hearts pounding and their breath coming in ragged gasps. But the manor seems to have other plans, its corridors shifting and changing before their eyes, trapping them in a nightmarish maze. Cornered in the manor's dark heart, the group confronts the malevolent force that has plagued them since their arrival. With a final desperate act of defiance, they banish the entity back into the shadows from whence it came, freeing themselves from its grasp and escaping into the night.
Anna and her husband, Tom, arrive at Blackwood Manor, an old mansion they inherited from Anna's late uncle. The house is grand, but has been abandoned for years. As they explore, Anna finds a dusty old journal in the study. Curious, she decides to read it later. That night, Anna wakes up to strange noises, whispers, and faint footsteps. She dismisses it as the house settling. When she looks out the window, she sees a flickering light in the garden. She turns to wake Tom, but the light disappears when she looks back. The next day, Anna reads the journal. It belonged to her uncle, who wrote about a mysterious figure he saw in the house. The entries become more frantic, describing how the figure tormented him. His last entry warns about a hidden room in the attic. Determined to find the hidden room, Anna and Tom search the attic. They discover a concealed door behind some old furniture. Inside, they find an old nursery filled with dusty toys and a large, cracked mirror. In the mirror, Anna briefly sees a shadowy figure standing behind them. That night, the haunting intensifies. Anna sees the shadowy figure in the mirror again, now clearer and more menacing. The air grows cold, and she hears a chilling whisper saying, "Find my child." Terrified, she realizes the ghost is trying to communicate. Anna tells Tom about her experiences. They decide to seek help from a local historian. The historian tells them about the tragic history of Blackwood Manor, involving a woman named Eleanor, who lost her child and died in despair. Her spirit is believed to haunt the house. Following the historian's advice, Anna and Tom search the garden and find a small, unmarked grave hidden among the overgrowth. They realize it's the grave of Eleanor's child. They decide to perform a simple ritual to give the child a proper burial. Anna and Tom perform the ritual, laying flowers and saying a prayer. As they finish, they see Eleanor's ghost appear, looking peaceful. She silently thanks them before fading away. The air feels warmer and the oppressive atmosphere lifts. With the ritual complete, the haunting stops. The house feels lighter and more welcoming. Anna and Tom decide to stay, feeling a deep connection to the house and its history. They keep the journal as a reminder of the past they helped lay to rest. Months later, Anna and Tom enjoy their peaceful home. They often think about Eleanor and the child and are grateful for the experience that brought them closer together and helped them appreciate their new home. The memories of the past live on, but in a peaceful way. In the outskirts of a small town stands an old, dilapidated house, its windows shattered and its walls covered in ivy. 4 friends, Tom, Sarah, Emily, and Alex, decide to explore the abandoned house one evening. As they approach, the moon casts eerie shadows on the broken porch. With trepidation, the friends push open the creaking front door and step into the house's foyer. The air is musty, and dust motes dance in the beams of their flashlights. As they explore further, they feel a sense of unease settle over them, as if the house itself is watching their every move. Inside the house, they encounter rooms filled with decaying furniture and peeling wallpaper. Strange symbols are etched into the walls, and the temperature drops noticeably as they explore deeper. A feeling of dread washes over the group as they realize they are not alone in the house. As they delve further into the house, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to echo through the halls. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an eerie chorus that sends shivers down their spines. Shadows dance on the walls, twisting and contorting in unnatural ways. Suddenly, a ghostly figure materializes before them, a translucent apparition with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. Its ethereal form hovers in the air, its movements slow and deliberate. Frozen with fear, the friends watch as the ghostly figure drifts closer, its presence filling the house with a chilling cold. With a collective cry, the friends turn and flee from the house, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the dark corridors, their breath ragged and their footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind them, the ghostly figure follows, its unearthly wails echoing through the empty halls. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from the house, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They vow never to speak of their night in the haunted house again, haunted by the shadows that lurk within its walls. But they know that some secrets are best left buried in the darkness.
Lily received a mysterious letter inviting her to an old mansion that once belonged to her ancestors. She had always been curious about her family's past and decided to visit. The mansion was isolated, surrounded by overgrown trees and an eerie silence. As she walked towards the door, the sky turned gray and the wind began to howl. Lily pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the mansion was dark and dusty, with cobwebs hanging from the corners. An old chandelier hung precariously from the ceiling, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. The door slammed shut behind her, making her jump. Lily stepped into the grand hall, where portraits of stern-looking ancestors lined the walls. Their eyes seemed to follow her as she moved. She felt a chill run down her spine as she heard faint whispering. The room was dimly lit by the light filtering through the grimy windows. Lily found herself in the mansion's library, filled with dusty books and old furniture. An old leather-bound book lay open on a desk. As she approached, she saw it was a diary detailing strange rituals and mysterious disappearances. The air grew colder, and she felt an unseen presence watching her. Lily discovered a secret door behind a bookshelf. She hesitated but then pushed it open, revealing a dark, narrow staircase leading down. The air was damp and cold. With her flashlight in hand, she began to descend, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the silence. The basement was even colder, with strange symbols painted on the walls and an old wooden table in the center. On the table were ancient artifacts and melted candles. Lily felt an overwhelming sense of dread. She heard whispers growing louder, almost as if they were coming from the walls themselves. Lily's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. Panic set in as the whispers turned into screams. She fumbled to turn the flashlight back on. When she did, she saw a ghostly figure standing by the table, staring at her with hollow eyes. She backed away in terror. Desperate to escape, Lily turned and ran up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, with doors slamming and shadows moving around her. She reached the front door, threw it open, and ran into the stormy night, her heart pounding. She didn't stop until she reached her car. Breathing heavily, Lily glanced back at the mansion as she reached her car. In an upstairs window, she saw the ghostly figure watching her. The whispers faded, but the memory of that night would haunt her forever. She drove away, vowing never to return. The sun was setting as Emily, a young journalist, arrived at Ravenswood Manor. She had heard rumors of the haunted mansion and wanted to investigate for her next big story. The old, decaying building stood at the edge of the town, surrounded by overgrown trees. As she approached the iron gates, a sense of dread washed over her. Emily pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the mansion was dark and cold. Dust covered the floor and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but neglected interior. Her footsteps echoed ominously as she walked down the main hallway. In the dim light, Emily noticed portraits lining the walls. The eyes in the paintings seemed to follow her every move, making her uneasy. Suddenly, she heard a faint whisper, like someone calling her name. She turned around quickly, but there was no one there. Her heart began to race. Emily entered the music room, where an old piano stood covered in dust. As she approached, she heard a soft, haunting melody. The keys were moving on their own, playing a melancholic tune. The room grew colder, and Emily felt an unseen presence watching her. In the library, Emily found a hidden door behind a bookcase. Inside, she discovered a small room filled with strange artifacts and an old leather-bound journal. She opened the journal and read about dark rituals and a curse placed on the mansion. The final entry warned of a vengeful spirit trapped within the house. As Emily read the journal, the temperature dropped sharply. She heard footsteps approaching and saw a shadowy figure materialize in the doorway. The figure was a ghostly woman with a twisted expression of rage. She pointed at Emily, her voice echoing with anger. "You must leave this place!" Emily's survival instincts kicked in, and she bolted from the hidden room. She raced through the dark hallways, the spirit's angry screams echoing behind her. She reached the front door and flung it open, escaping into the night. Gasping for breath, she looked back to see the mansion standing silent and still, but she knew she had been lucky to escape with her life. Safe at home, Emily reviewed her notes and the footage she had captured. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. She wrote her article, revealing the mansion's dark history and the vengeful spirit. As she finished, she felt a cold breeze and heard a whisper, "Thank you." She knew the spirits had found some peace.